Dr. Terry Wahls, we meet at last.
Yes.
So,
Thank you. So glad to be here.
okay. So one of the things, as far as I'm sure there's a lot more to learn from you than there is from me, but I brought you some things that I do. I started
Here we
drinking
go. Yep.
half my body weight in ounces of water a day. So I brought you the filter that I use when I travel on the road, and this is a discontinued model. It's a silver impregnated carbon filter made by NSA, which you said was the National Safety Associates, not the National Security Agency. Right?
Yeah, I was glad to see that.
So here's the way it works. You fill the water here, it goes through the percolates and then comes out into a cup or a bottle.
Yeah.
So I don't use plastic water because water dissolves everything it touches. It dissolves plastic and you end up drinking it.
Yeah. Plastics are hormone disruptors, can create big problems, and you and I, because of the MS, we probably have inefficient enzymes that process and eliminate these toxins. So your paying attention to water was a brilliant first step. Brilliant.
Okay, well, I'm not going to argue with success, but so as the orchestras we tour, we go to China for 3 weeks every year, and I know there are some serious pollution problems there. I'm sure the water.
And do you tolerate being in China for 3 weeks, or do you find that that's?
I try not to do so much in the air. The air is, we measure our particles per million. They measure it, I think, per thousand or something. You can't imagine how bad the air pollution is, but you see that everything is the dumping ground, air, water, and the soil too. So I try to be very careful about what I put into my body there. But you were saying in Iowa, your water was an issue, you think?
Right. Yeah. I'm sure it was. I'm a farm kid. Grew up in small northeast Iowa, and that meant that we had a private well. And I know from water quality work in Iowa, 80% of the wells are contaminated with atrazine. And atrazine is a herbicide banned in Europe. Certainly worsens inflammation. It's a toxin for your mitochondria. I predict what we'll see ultimately, it increases the risk of neurodegeneration and MS. So we had the private well. It was a conventional farm. I remember being out there helping my dad with agricultural chemicals. And we probably did not have adequate personal protective safety equipment, I'm sure. And then when I was a resident, I was living out in the country again, and we again had a private well. And that well was very shallow. It's called the sandpit well, only about 25 feet deep. And so, at least my parents' well was over 100 feet deep. This very shallow well probably had pesticides, many pesticides in them as well. So water and toxins were definitely part of my why I became ill.
Oh, because, one of the things that, not to promote my book, one of the things I talked about was the day I was diagnosed, I had a dream and it took me back to my childhood. We moved to an area on Long Island. It was a newly developed area and the builders had left a pit of waste. It was all sealants and you name it and all the
Things
buckets
that are
of
bad
this.
for
Yeah.
you.
And as a child, I used to play in that pit. And the day I was diagnosed, I had this dream that I was playing in that pit again. And just, I didn't know where that dream came from. I hadn't thought about that for 35 years. And
somehow your body knew and remembered and was telling you all of that stuff somehow. And Bob, do not feel bad about promoting your book. That's a wonderful book. And I enjoyed it very much. And I appreciate how much time you spent talking about the mental aspect of MS and the mental aspect of choosing to go down this recovery path.